Ever feel like the news is just a fire hose, just spraying you with this overwhelming torrent of information every single day?
Oh, absolutely. It's hard to keep up.
Well, today we're not just taking a sick. We're diving deep into a really fascinating stack of your recent sources.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission to cut through the noise, pull out the most important nuggets, and, connect the dots across headlines that might seem totally unrelated.
Right.
We're talking everything from high-stakes legal battles and federal health policy all the way to global energy showdowns and the shifting sands of American politics.
And it's compelling, isn't it, how these individual stories, when you look at them together, they really paint a much richer picture of the complex power dynamics at play.
Definitely.
We'll be exploring how these different forces are reshaping, well, the very nature of governance, both here at home and internationally.
Yeah.
This deep dive, it really encourages us to think critically, doesn't it, about the underlying motivations, the potential ripple effects, getting beyond just the surface headlines.
Exactly. So grab your favorite beverage, because we're about to make you incredibly well-informed on some truly surprising developments.
Let's get into it.
Okay. First up, we're starting with a story that has some pretty significant implications. We're talking public health, scientific integrity, even the structure of federal appointments. It's about Dr. Susan Monarez. She just started as the director of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, on July 31st. But multiple reports suggest she's already on the chopping block.
Already. Wow. And the reason?
Well, it seems to be a fundamental disagreement with HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. on vaccine policy.
Yeah, okay. That explains a lot.
Monarez, she's a medical doctor, right? She operates on the scientific consensus, vaccines save lives. Kennedy, however, well, he keeps citing this retracted article.
The fraudulent one.
Yeah, by an author whose medical license was revoked, claiming vaccines cause autism.
Yeah.
This single, completely discredited piece of evidence seems to be the basis for his entire national vaccine policy.
That situation, it really highlights a critical tension, doesn't it? The independence of scientific institutions versus, political appointments.
Absolutely.
Dr. Monarez's legal challenge, it isn't just about her job. It feels like it's about setting crucial precedents. Who actually holds authority in these vital federal agencies? And critically, protecting scientific integrity.
Exactly. And our sources reveal that Kennedy's Senate confirmation process now looks like, well, maybe a bit of a charade.
How so?
He told senators he had an open mind about vaccines. But since then, he's actively worked to, quote, rid the country of vaccines and fired numerous experts on the subject.
So much for an open mind.
Right. But Monarez isn't going quietly. She's taking a defiant stance. She argues that as a Senate-confirmed officer of the United States, she serves at the president's pleasure, not a cabinet secretary's, which would make her firing unlawful. Trump quickly backed Kennedy up, so this legal fight, it's almost certainly headed to the Supreme Court.
A major showdown, then.
And get this in a move that's sure to get significant and probably skeptical attention from the medical community. Kennedy announced he'll reveal the cause of autism in September.
Reveal the cause of autism in September.
That's what the sources say. It's also worth noting, Monarez's role apparently had structural limitations from the start. She needed approval from both the CDC and HHS Chief of Staff for certain actions.
That adds another layer. And what's particularly insightful here is who's representing Monarez. It's Abby Lowell, the top lawyer.
Right.
He's actually started a firm specifically to defend individuals he believes Trump is unfairly targeting.
Is that right? Who else is on his list?
Well, high-profile figures. Fed Governor Lisa Cook, New York AG Letitia James, Miles Taylor, Mark Zaid.
Wow, quite a roster.
Lowell is quoted saying his cases share a, quote, central theme: the full power of the federal government being pointed in the direction of individual people who happen to be adverse to this administration's policies or who have criticized them.
That's a strong claim.
He emphasizes that, quote, no previous president has ever weaponized the entire federal government in order to destroy his critics. So this goes beyond just policy disagreements, doesn't it? It touches on fundamental questions about the rule of law, individual rights.
Okay, so moving from that internal friction within federal agencies, let's explore this fascinating shift, how blue states are now actively challenging federal authority. They're effectively turning the tables on the concept of federalism.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Historically, red states championed federalism and states' rights. They used it to implement policies like abortion bans or to sort of sidestep federal gun law.
Right, that was the playbook.
But now, blue states are adopting a strategy of non-cooperation, leveraging their own state infrastructure to push back.
And this strategy, it really highlights the flexibility, maybe the potential for resistance that's kind of embedded in our federal system. The critical question here is, what happens when states adopt this strategy of like flooding the zone against the federal government?
Right. What does happen?
Well, lawsuits, Supreme Court rulings, those are inevitable, of course. But the sources point out that blue states could copy Texas's approach to abortion laws. You know, make small legislative tweaks, repass bills.
And force endless individual legal battles.
Exactly. It's a tactic designed to just overwhelm the courts, make federal enforcement basically impossible against a united front of, what, nearly half the country?
Yeah.
This isn't about one big dramatic confrontation. It's a sustained campaign of obstruction.
The historical parallel they draw is really compelling. Free states, back before the Civil War, largely refused to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act.
Right.
They returned only about 4 enslaved people per year nationwide for decades.
So non-cooperation can be incredibly effective.
And today, blue states could use modern non-cooperation in some really impactful ways. Think about the financial leverage.
Okay.
Major blue states, like California and New York, they're responsible for hundreds of billions in federal tax revenue.
Yeah.
If you delay payments indefinitely, just like, personnel shortages.
Plausible deniability.
Or technical glitches, or they could leverage their control over state-chartered banks.
Yeah.
Especially in financial hubs like New York, where systems like SWIFT and ACH process huge federal transactions.
So what could they do there?
Impose enhanced security reviews on large federal transfers to slow everything down.
Wow.
And it goes beyond just finance. Operationally, federal agencies like the IRS, they rely heavily on state tax records, DMV data, banking systems.
Yeah.
States could implement new regulations, require manual review of, say, random federal data requests, severely hamper operations.
To grind things to a halt?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Furthermore, imagine a block of maybe 15 trifecta blue states where one party controls everything.
Even or both houses. Yeah.
They could demand, say, $200 billion from the feds for system upgrades just to ensure compatibility, essentially holding federal functions hostage.
It's bold.
And on top of that, they could actively lure professionals away from red states, maybe stop recognizing red state medical licenses or medical school grads for residencies.
A brain drain strategy.
Exactly. While offering incentives, fast-track licensing for doctors, nurses, teachers to move from red states to blue states. It's a powerful kind of inventive strategy. Could create a huge brain drain.
Definitely a new dimension to federal-state conflict.
All right, let's pivot now to the economy, because this next development is quite striking. We're seeing some really unconventional moves, things that are making even, seasoned conservatives scratch their heads.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Think about the government becoming a major shareholder in a tech giant.
Like owning stock.
Exactly. The sources reveal Trump effectively forced Intel to sell 10% of its shares to the U.S. government.
10%, making the government.
The largest single shareholder.
Yep.
And they got a bargain. Paid below market price $20.47 per share versus Intel's market price of $24.80.
Wow, that's quite a move. And this domestic intervention, it sort of opens up a broader discussion, doesn't it, about international economic policy, too. Well, the question it raises is, what are the implications for the global economy when a major player uses economic leverage in such a direct kind of coercive way, both at home and on the world stage?
Right. And the immediate backlash, domestically at least, from libertarians and conservatives, was swift. Scott Lincecum from the Cato Institute, for example, called it a very bad idea.
Not surprising. Coming from Cato, what were his main points?
Well, his critique boils down to a few key areas. He sees big risks to investor confidence, legal stability.
Lawsuits, probably.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Potential for political interference in core business decisions, like who gets hired, where factories are located.
Yeah, imagine pressure to keep a factory open in a politically favored state, even if it makes no economic sense.
Exactly. Or even if you can't attract talent there, maybe because of state laws like abortion bans.
Right.
And he sees a fundamental threat to market dynamism, stifling R&D innovation.
If the government starts treating the company like a cash cow.
Precisely. Forcing unsustainable dividends, hurting long-term investment, slowing down decision-making because you need presidential approval, biasing government contracts towards companies using Intel products. It distorts everything.
A long list of potential downsides.
And Lincecum also warned about the precedent. If this goes unchecked, What stops future administrations dictating terms to, say, GM about electric car production, creating policy whiplash that could make companies totally unviable?
That's a serious concern. Was he the only one?
Oh, no. Critics across the conservative spectrum chimed in. Senators Tom Tillis, Rand Paul, former VP Mike Pence, even Trump's own guy, Larry Kudlow, was very, very uncomfortable.
So broad pushback from the right.
Yeah, they called it everything from a step toward socialism to a state-owned enterprise a la CCCP. Senator Todd Young, who was key in the GPS Act, even clarified the law was never meant for this kind of direct government equity stake.
Interesting.
And the sources mentioned future worries, too. Trump reportedly thinking about an equity stake in Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed. But almost all their revenue comes from the government anyway.
Exactly. 97%. Raises the specter of a monopoly, stifled innovation, if Trump favors his company over competitors like Boeing.
Yikes. And that domestic intervention, as I mentioned, it kind of echoes a similar approach in Trump's international energy strategy.
Okay, connect those dots for us.
Well, the reported aim is to coerce other countries, force them to abandon clean energy projects and instead buy U.S. oil, gas, and coal.
Even though renewables are getting cheaper here.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though the U.S. is arguably fighting a losing battle domestically, where renewables are becoming increasingly competitive just on economics.
So what's the tactic internationally?
Blackmail, basically. Threatening tariffs.
Seriously, are there examples?
Oh, yes. The EU apparently agreed to buy $750 billion in U.S. oil and gas over 3 years just to get tariffs on their products set at only 15%.
$750 billion. That's huge.
South Korea agreed to $100 billion in U.S. liquefied gas. Japan agreed to invest $550 billion in U.S. energy infrastructure, partly to ship Alaskan oil and gas to Asia.
Wow. But can the U.S. even deliver all that?
Well, that's the potential bright light mentioned in the sources. The U.S. currently lacks the capacity to export this much energy. Building the infrastructure needed will take years.
So maybe some of these promises are just smoke?
Could be. More smoke than substance, perhaps. But the sources also note many countries will likely really resent the U.S. for meddling in their domestic energy policies.
Trump
reportedly couldn't care less about those sentiments. It's definitely a bold, maybe aggressive use of economic power globally.
Okay, so speaking of power plays, let's shift focus now. From global economics to the fascinating, maybe precarious internal structures of our political parties. First, the Republican Party. According to one source, it's somehow managed to fly with 6 wings.
6 wings. That sounds unstable.
Right, and the only reason it hasn't crashed and burned, the sources suggest, is the gravitational force of Donald Trump holding all these pieces together.
And that internal dynamic, these wings, it raises a crucial question, doesn't it? How does this cohesion, or lack thereof, play out in election cycles? Doug Sosnick, former Clinton advisor, has a particularly insightful take on this.
Okay, let's break down those 6 wings first. The sources list them out. You've got the Medjie populists.
Right, the working class base. Anti-immigration, anti-foreign wars, pro-tariffs.
They're the more traditional free market Republicans. Lower taxes, smaller government, free trade focus.
The establishment wing, maybe? Think Youngkin, Kemp, Thune.
Then the fiscal hawks, kind of remnants of the Tea Party, focused on budget deficits. Cruz, Paul, DeSantis fit here. The religious right, obviously crucial. Won over by Trump because he delivered on judges, abortion, anti-LGBTQ views, despite his personal conduct. Johnson, Langford.
Right. A transactional relationship, perhaps?
Then this emerging tech.
Right.
Focus on AI, crypto, free speech online. Musk, Andreessen, Sachs. They often favor skilled immigrants to keep salaries down.
An interesting new faction.
And finally, the MAHA, Make America Hateful Again, and former Democrats wing. Conservative Dems who felt the party went too woke. Robert Kennedy Jr. is seen as the leader here. Anti-Big Ag is another theme.
Wow. That's a diverse coalition, often antagonistic, you'd think.
Totally. Reminiscent of FDR's 1932 Democratic Coalition. Lots of different conflicting factions held together by his genius. But it eventually fractured.
So the big question is, what happens to the GOP post-Trump?
Exactly.
And what's noteworthy here, going back to Sosnick, are his key observations about modern voting patterns.
Okay, what does he see?
He says the single most important factor determining how people vote these days is educational level.
Really? More than income or race?
Apparently so, according to his analysis. He also distinguishes between two types of politicians. Party regulars, their votes mostly transfer to other party candidates, and movement leaders like Trump or Bernie Sanders, whose votes are much more personal, they don't necessarily transfer down the ballot.
Okay. And that difference matters for?
It has huge implications for 2026, the midterms.
Well, so?
Sosnick suggests Trump's core Trumpist supporters, they aren't necessarily traditional Republicans. They might not turn out for House candidates in 2026 if Trump himself isn't on the ballot.
Right, because midterm turnout is always lower anyway.
Exactly. And historically, who turned out reliably in midterms? College-educated Republicans.
I know.
Now, most college-educated voters lean Democrat. And they're angry. They're expected to turn out in force in 2026.
That's a huge demographic shift.
It really is. Sosnick points out, back in '96, less educated states were largely blue. By 2000, that flipped, partly because Al Gore was seen as, a snobby intellectual turning off Joe Sixpack.
Right, I remember that narrative.
So Sosnick argues that process is now essentially complete. Highly educated states are mostly blue. Less educated states trend red.
So his prediction for 2026?
An unfavorable electorate for the GOP. Bodes well for Democrats, he thinks.
But what about 2028? Presidential year, different dynamics.
Right. Sosnick highlights big challenges for Democrats then. They need an inspirational candidate, not just an anti-Trump figure. They need to navigate social issues carefully, where some stances might be outside the mainstream for the broader electorate. And crucially, they need a compelling agenda for non-college voters. That's still 60% of the electorate.
So just not being Donald Trump isn't a winning strategy long-term.
Not enough for 2028, according to Sosnick. They need a proactive vision for those working-class, non-college voters to avoid losing them completely.
Okay, speaking of the electorate, let's talk about the people in Congress for a second. There's this geriatric problem brewing, particularly for one party.
Yeah, the age factor.
It seems many elderly Democrats, say 75 and older, are refusing to retire. Even though the base is calling for young blood.
And the Republicans.
They're apparently not pressuring their oldsters to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe because it would imply their own oldster-in-chief is past his prime.
Interesting dynamic.
So you see long-serving members running again. Maxine Waters, 87. Steny Hoyer, 86. Jim Clyburn, 85, apparently motivated by his kids here, 56 and 63. Rosa DeLauro, 82. Bonnie Watson-Coleman, 80. Lois Frankel, 77, who sort of implied younger generations are clueless.
Wow, that's quite a list of incumbents holding on.
The stats are striking. 50 members 75 or older are up in 2026. Nearly 70% of them are running again, and 70% of those are Democrats.
So it's more pronounced on the Democratic side.
Definitely. And sobering statistic.
Yeah.
3 House Democrats, Sylvester Turner, 70, Jerry Connolly, 75, Raul Grijalva, 77, have tragically died in office just in 2025.
Goodness.
It almost seems like dying in the saddle is a Democratic goal, for some, as one source put it, maybe a bit cynically.
Yeah.
And there's clearly a disconnect with the base. DNC Vice Chair David Hogg started a packy to primary older Democrats.
Oh, we heard about that.
It got shut down by DNC Chair Ken Martin. Shows a real struggle between the party establishment and its younger activists.
Right. And this situation with congressional age, plus the national electoral dynamics we discussed, it really makes state-level races even more critical, doesn't it?
How so?
It leads us to our final area of electoral focus, state attorney general elections. Often overlooked, but hugely important.
Why AGs specifically?
Well, they're the state's top cops, right?
Yeah.
Handling criminal civil cases. But critically, they're the ones who often sue federal administrations from the opposing party.
The legal challenges we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They're arguably the most important state officials after governors in terms of national impact.
Okay. So what's the landscape there?
There are 31 AG elections this cycle. Right now, it's 24 Republicans, 19 Democrats out of the 43 elected AGs.
And the battlegrounds.
Here's what's striking. All 5 races considered toss-ups. Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, Wisconsin are currently held by Democrats.
All 5. So those are all potential Republican pickups.
Significant potential, yes. For example, Chris May is the Democrat in Arizona. She won by only 280 votes in 2022. That's razor thin. Geoff Call, the Dem in Wisconsin, might run for governor. That could leave an open seat in a state that's already fiercely contested.
So it looks tough for Democrats to hold those seats, let alone pick up new ones.
It highlights a distinct lack of, low-hanging fruit for Democrats in these AG races this cycle. Maybe Virginia in 2025, Georgia in 2026 offers slight possibilities, but they might need a strong black gubernatorial candidate to really boost turnout there.
Okay, got it. And just quickly, to round out the electoral picture, we also looked at the closest House districts, the ones that can really swing the national balance of power.
The bellwethers.
Election analyst Nathan Gonzalez has this method for measuring district closeness.
Yeah.
Combines federal and state results over 4 cycles.
Okay.
His list of the 10 closest districts, before any new redistricting, obviously, they're all within 1 percentage point. Clear toss-ups.
And the split.
Currently 5 held by Democrats, 5 by Republicans. Perfectly balanced.
But very sensitive to national tides.
Exactly. History shows these districts rarely move independently. National trends affect most of them. A mere 2-point national popular vote advantage for one party could potentially swing all 10.
That's incredible leverage. Where do things stand now?
Well, the most recent generic House poll shows Democrats ahead by 8 points. But, as we always say, a week is a long time in politics.
True.
And, of course, gerrymandering could still redraw districts and change the whole landscape before 2026.
Always a factor. So pulling it all together, what's truly striking is how these, seemingly disparate threads all converge.
Yeah.
The challenges to federal power, both from within, like the CDC issue, and from without, like the blue state strategy. The government's expanding and kind of controversial role in the economy, both domestically with Intel and internationally with energy.
Right.
And these profound internal shifts within the political parties, the 6 wings of the GOP, the Democrats' demographic challenges, they all point to a period of really significant redefinition.
Redefinition of what, exactly?
Of power, really. It's clear the traditional lines of authority and influence are being tested, redrawn across multiple fronts. It feels like it's fundamentally altering how our system operates.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, and, well, for the future? We've seen this aggressive government intervention in health, in corporations, in global energy. We've seen states push back against the feds in really novel, powerful ways. And we've seen political parties grappling with their own identities, facing these huge existential questions about leadership, about voter appeal.
Yeah.
It really leaves you wondering, isn't it? What happens when the very foundations of how power is supposed to work, checks and balances, federalism, the government's role in the economy, what happens when those aren't just challenged, but actively redefined?
It's a profound question.
How will these, really seismic shifts shape not just the next election cycle, but the very fabric of our society for decades to come?